Hi everybody, it's Dale from IGN Southeast Asia, and this month, March, we are celebrating women from all facets of gaming, and today we're having a special panel discussion with some female gaming journalists from all across the region who are here to share their experiences on their career. So, let's talk about it. Please introduce yourselves. Let's start with Kenzie.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kenzie Du. I'm based in Manila, Philippines, and I write for Virtual C. So we're a platform that specifically focuses on the Southeast Asian gaming development industry. So we cover news, reviews, and features, event coverage, and things like that.
All right, Si Jia.
Oh, hi, I'm Si Jia. I'm based in Singapore and I'm from Geek Culture. Basically, our publication covers all sorts of news, articles, reviews, features from a wide spectrum of topics. So we cover things from tech, movies, games, comics, to even toys or anime.
Hey everyone, my name is Sam. I am Malaysian, but I live in Tokyo in Japan. I freelance write, so I write for a bunch of different publications, mostly around with Tokyo Weekender, Kotaku Australia, and Games Hub, which is also based in Australia. I guess my beat, in particular, because I'm based in Japan, I try to cover games relevant to Japan, games based about Japan. There's a lot of that happening all over the world, of course. But then in regards to sort of the Australian media, I try to bring more of a Southeast Asian flavor to the mix. So trying to cover games that probably aren't as discovered in that part of the world, and just, giving them some coverage and some love over there.
Nice. So how did you all get your start as journalists?
I feel like this is such a women thing that we're all waiting for each other to say, we're being polite.
Sorry, it's the Asian culture.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can sort of kick it off. I've always, been writing. I'm sure most of us have been writing, ever since high school and things like that. But I think my first opportunity was when I was living in Australia. I did a lot of stuff around travel and around food. And in that time, I also tried to sort of lead on my experience. So I covered more Asian restaurants or Malaysian restaurants, and then just covering more the Asian side of things in Australia. And then I think slowly from there, I decided I wanted to write about other things I was also really interested in. That was gaming, something I've done for a long time. And I think, that's just how my progression has been. But what about both of you?
For me, actually, our stories are kind of similar. I came from an industry sales in media that focused on travel, business in other countries, and then of course came the pandemic. That career of mine fizzled away. But then at the end of it, being locked down, playing all the games that I could, I realized, why don't I write about games? So I actually looked around, did some work for a review site, not necessarily to earn a living, but to just for fun, practice my writing, critical thinking, and really just share what I feel are important things from my perspective about these games that I'm playing. And I guess with Virtual C, I found my editor Andrea's posts on Twitter, and Twitter is such a great community to find gigs, things, passion projects, and of course like-minded people. And then 2 or 3 years later, I'm here. That's all.
Okay, so for myself, I can't exactly remember how I started as a journalist, but when I was in school, in secondary school or university, or even in polytechnic when I was studying mass communications, I started dabbling in journalism. Then I took an entire journalism board, which is painful but also satisfying. Then afterwards, I went into freelancing, so I wrote lifestyle articles first. But I was very self-indulgent, so some of the articles that I wrote had some gaming slant to it. Afterwards, I decided to try my luck at Geek Culture, but they weren't opening slots actually. I was kind of thick-skinned, I just wrote in straight. I just emailed them. Yeah. Then I think they took a while to reply, so I thought they didn't see my application or whatever. Then I passed the test, and then I started as an intern there first. Then afterwards I extended to being a freelancer. Then I'm now a full-timer. Yeah.
So what are your proudest achievements as a journalist so far?
Well, for me personally, I think when it comes to games, it's kind of a bittersweet experience. So I'll go into a bit of detail. So my proudest achievement was I got to go to Tokyo Game Show last year, and I covered the entire experience, and I wrote a bunch of different articles for all the publications I mentioned before. So for Tokyo Weekender, for Games Hub, and for Kotaku. So I really liked that. It was such an amazing opportunity, going there. I got to go on sort of the business day where, the public weren't allowed to go in yet. So you could really just sort of like, it was like a big playground, imagine all your big titles, all your indie titles, everyone there. And there's like a lot of space for you to move. You don't have to like fight with other people. So that was really, really cool. And I'm very proud of the coverage I did. But at the same time, when I was writing about this, or sort of like preparing to go, one of my friends who is in the games industry, well, he's not a friend anymore because he actually doubted the validity of my presence there. So he was someone who works for like one of the big gaming, I won't say gaming companies, I won't say who. And I told him, I was like, oh, hey, I'm going to go be at Tokyo Game Show. And he was going to be there helping out with his company. And I was really nervous, but excited to go because, it was my first time. But, I was also feeling a little bit of like imposter syndrome and things like that, right? And then he asked me, okay, so which day are you going? And I said, I'm going on Thursday, which is the business day. And he said like, oh, how did you get in there? And I said, I applied as media, so I'm going. And he's like, you applied and you got accepted, like question mark. And like that really hit me at that time. And I was thinking like, wow, like he doesn't think like I'm worth going. Maybe he thinks because I'm a woman, like I, wasn't valid, maybe just because I'm a freelancer. So all that kind of insecurities, like it's a really big achievement of mine, but at the same time, at the time, I felt really bad about myself as well. So that was kind of disappointing. Yeah.
But hey, you made it.
I made it. Yeah, I made it.
You really did.
Wow. Well, telling to what Kenzie said about how amazing Twitter is, like at that time I was like upset and embarrassed, but I was like, I'm gonna write to Twitter and just like vent, right? So I wrote about that on Twitter, and so many people came to my rescue. They were like, oh, I'm going, like let's meet up, like, oh, I'm going, let's meet up. And then like we had there was like a female game dev, her name is Chantal, shout out to her. I didn't know who she was like at all. She just out of nowhere just like replied to my tweet and was like, your presence there is valid, like don't let people talk you down. Just this like hype woman out of nowhere who turns out to be from Australia and be making this amazing game, but just kind of was just like hyping me. I was like, wow, like this person is really cool. So that was awesome, and in the end it worked out really well. But yeah, just there are experiences like that in the industry, unfortunately. But yeah, what about both of you? Any
okay, for mine, it was back when I was an intern. I think I was still an intern. I was heading to South Korea to cover Black Panther junket. So it was back during the first Black Panther. And okay, so I don't know any Korean, and I was like, it was my first overseas junket. I think I panicked a lot, and then I took public transport, which ended up to be a very bad idea. I don't know how, somehow or another, I ended up in my hotel. And then I think I was panicking a lot because it's the overseas junket and you're alone, right? And we have to do, back then we had to do the article, we had to interview the stars. We had to take photos of them as well, but it's on the red carpet, which means you kind of have to fight with the public and then also tweet and do Insta stories. So it was a lot of things at the same time, and I think it was quite overwhelming. I don't know how, somehow or another, I think I just kind of like went with the flow. Then managed to pull it off, but I think the experience was interesting only because it was my first overseas junket. It was a big event. A Black Panther back then was very, very huge, and the red carpet was, wow, it was really a lot of people. Yeah, I had to really squeeze and get the shots as far as possible. I think back then the Disney people were very helpful also, because I think they were very understanding. So it's nice to see when there's the studio side has helped as well. So it's quite overwhelming when you first start out with junkets or like big events. But I think after a while I got used to it. But it was the Black Panther one that hit hard because afterwards we all know what happened to Chadwick Boseman. So yeah, it was quite, yeah, there was that connection there for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's awesome. Like especially like hearing that, a lot of these big brands are starting to really care a lot about, in media in Southeast Asia, getting invited, making sure you represent, our part of the world, and then also just being that female voice as well, I think is really powerful and really important. That's awesome. What a great opportunity.
Yeah, it was, even though I was panicking like 90%.
Wow. And for myself, I guess because my focus really was on games, I guess game reviews at that time. I was really proud every time I got to finish a game and write a review, and then find people who said, "Oh, thanks for suggesting this." Like if it's on Twitter or like my private Facebook profile, thanks for suggesting this. Sometimes it's a bigger title from the local, rather regional gaming scene, or sometimes it's just some game I felt like playing from itch.io by a Southeast Asian creator. I feel proud when maybe not a lot of people will be able to find the game, even though it's an incredible game. Just doesn't have that. Of course, it's so competitive in the gaming industry, or even for indie dev. I guess I felt really accomplished whenever I introduced even just one or two people to this experience that I had that maybe lasted only maybe 2 or 3 hours, but also challenged a lot of things that I thought about when I think about gaming, because all of us grew up with huge titles from Japanese companies, from US, European developers, and this is also sort of my decolonizing process for my taste in games, and of course my language. It's a proud moment for me. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I really love what you guys do over at Virtual SEA. Like, obviously, representation is so important, but I think us as well, just like having our perspective makes it very different compared to a journalist who's covering from the US, or a journalist who might be male or just from a different region. Like, having our perspective is really important. And obviously, for some female gamers out there, maybe their tastes are more aligned with ours, and maybe they relate more to your reviews. So that's really, really great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of still, it's really heartwarming to see what Western journalists have to say about the games being produced in our region. But there's definitely something we can say that very relevant, more meaty, I would say, to the people who would pick up this game. So yeah, totally agree with you on that.
I mean, it's pretty cool because the world is so big, and sometimes, indie games on the rise now, so it's always nice to have like smaller titles going to limelight, especially if they're from our region. For every big AAA game that we all play, I feel like there are a lot of other success stories, but they are not being highlighted. So it's always very nice to see that the smaller parties are coming out of the shadows of their bigger giants of the industry.
Yeah. And I guess it's kind of our job. A part of me feels like it's our job really, to make sure we find a way to get those voices, especially from women, to that finish line, to that even the published word is such a big help to get their name out there, their work out there. And so I guess I could go on to the next question. It's kind of related in terms of the harsh reality.
Go.
I guess mine is a bit lighter. It's not personally against me, but the harsh reality that in this industry, there's still, I wouldn't say long way to go, because I do see a lot of female game developers, content creators who are really commanding, being tastemakers for the industry, but they're still not out there. Not as visible as I would like them to be. For example, I really enjoyed my time at the last Level Up KL in 2021 when it was still online. So it was a matchmaking system of online meetings. So it's something like this, face to face with founders, executive directors, producers of these games. So it's such exciting titles that are already winning awards and have demos that are well received and things like that. And I noticed I didn't speak to a single woman during that event, even though I had maybe 20 meetings during that time. I guess part of me is just surprised. Surprised that I didn't meet another woman, at least not if not necessarily in that leadership role, but someone from the team. So I guess I would like to hear more from women in these roles, whether they're from founder level, because that's great. But I'd also love to hear from game programmers, community managers, female community managers, programmers, artists. I'd really love to hear their perspectives in the greater Southeast Asian indie development scene. So that's just what I realized, and maybe a part of, I feel like I have to do a bit of work or see how I could make that a reality. So I have to bug my editor for that stuff.
That's a pretty good perspective to take, I guess. Mine is something similar. I've also noticed in a lot of gaming events that we attend, there are usually very few women or female journalists in general. So it's always nice when you see a fellow woman or female journalist, then you kind of talk to each other, stick through it, because you are the only
Yeah.
the only group there.
Yeah.
Yeah. For harsh realities, I think not so much for myself yet, because I think I'm not old. Okay, not that I'm not old enough. I feel like I am kind of old, but like I don't think I'm in the industry for long enough to see how it used to be. But I think sometimes when you go to certain events, especially because I cover tech and gaming, actually it's generally everything but mostly tech and gaming. And I feel like sometimes when you talk to certain personalities from that industry, they tend to have a certain misconception or like a certain mindset about women in the industry. So assuming, let's say I play Dark Souls, and they will immediately doubt, they'll be X-doubt, they'll be like, oh, have you finished it? Or you play it? No, but it's very they assume quite a bit. And like if you say, oh, you like gaming, then they'll be like, oh, is it Stardew Valley? I mean, I love Stardew Valley, it's great, but like we also play other games, So I think there's some sort of certain preconception when it comes to women. Yeah, and even in tech, like when I talk about keyboards, and they will be like, oh, are you sure like what you're talking about is correct? I'm like, I use like Gatorade yellow at home, but sure, yes. So I guess half of it has to go into education. I think some of them, they don't really mean it. Not that it's okay or anything, I just think subconsciously the culture has kind of seeped into them. But I think part of it has, you will have to educate them, or like you have to talk more to them to find out about certain like misconceptions they have and stuff like that. So I think during events, networking is good for that. Like you are chill with each other, you try to like talk it out and stuff, then you get to know each other a bit better and it's kind of chill. Yeah, then it helps when there's like a fellow like a woman or like a female journalist in the same space. So at least there's some sort of like, what do you call it? Some sort of chemistry or like
like camaraderie, right?
Yeah.
Safety net.
Yeah, safety. But I'm so great. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, I haven't, I mean, aside from that terrible experience I just told you guys about, aside from that, like, I haven't had too many difficult experiences, but it's more just like, there is like a lot of unconscious bias. Like, when we come to the table instantly, we have to prove our worth or like our credentials. Like, oh, I finished this is a game. Whereas if I was a guy, like, I don't think I would have to pull out my laundry list of achievements, show you my platinum though, or things like that. But then as a woman, it's like, oh, you must like comfy games. And again, there's nothing wrong with comfy games, but I also like playing your quote unquote difficult games, your Souls likes and things like that. And that has nothing to do with, my gender or how I represent myself. So I think that's definitely something. And, it's definitely like you can educate people about it, or you can be really patient. But after a while, I guess it can be really exhausting. If every interaction you have to keep proving yourself, like at what point do I get to just exist and just be a journalist in this space without having anyone questioning me? I think that's the part we still need to get to. But I love that all three of us are just like, if you see another woman or another person who is just like non-white, non-man, you're like, hey, like let's hang out, let's be best friends. Try and support each other, I think is super important, and definitely in the Twitter space as well is something I really try to do, just like hype each other up, just like connect different people together, just to really like build a more inclusive space.
And I guess I just add on that bias that girls play a certain kind of genre or only pick a certain kind of difficulty. I guess I'm thinking that I'm not sure if I'm the one who has the shortest experience so far. I only started in gaming around 2021. So I think you guys have more experience in the games industry. For myself, as a kid, it was kind of discouraged. Even though I did like games back then. I'd watch my brother on his PS1 even when I'm not allowed to touch it. I'd put in emulators in my phone because I wasn't given those kinds of consoles when I was a kid. And I remember going into a shopping phase when I was like 13 or around that age, and I found this super cute Mega Man shirt, just blue in his face. It was so cute. It went super well with my black mini skirt, and I wore it out, and I guess I got accused of like virtue signaling my like for games just to
impress me. Like, oh, she thinks she's in the game with it. Kind of like, oh my god,
it's just a
yeah, exactly. It was cute. It was a nice blue. But that experience in my teens kind of made me think, okay, I don't want to have that kind of reputation maybe I should just like my games in private. That's why when people I meet now who are surprised that I'm in the games industry and very passionate about it. You were never like that when I knew you back then. And I was like, no, I was always this way. I guess I was just discouraged to be very public or out about it, especially back then. Twitter was like mostly your friend, and now it's very much an industry exciting thing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. Like, we're not even starting from the same point as the boys, right? Because growing up, we were not encouraged in the same way. And then, like in your case, Kenzie, you had to fight for your right to play the games that your brother was allowed to play. like for me, I don't know if both of you had this experience, but like my family friends would be like, "Oh, you can't. Why do you have a Game Boy? You can't. It's for boys. That's why it's called Game Boy." And like they wouldn't want to play with me and things like that. So like that was always really frustrating. And I think also just collectively gaming was not cool as it is viewed today. So even more so if you're a girl who wants to play games, it's like double down, like, you know, super taboo, right?
I think mine was the opposite, because actually my household kind of banned consoles when I was younger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a very it's not really partly because of the Asian values and like the studying part about scoring good results and stuff, and the whole misconception about gaming back then. But it's also, I feel like after I got unbanned, after I started growing up, my parents started getting more like loose with it. I feel like the vengeance comes back, so now I'm like playing double the games that I was banned when I was young. But a lot of it happened like when I was younger. Not very young. When I started playing, I was actually kind of in my teens when I started like seriously gaming. And I think one major feature that caught me a bit off guard was that you didn't really get a choice to choose a female character. Like, you had to play a guy, right? Like, even when I started from Pokemon, I was excited, but then you can only play Red, and I was like, why? I want to play a female character. I mean, I also play male. Like, I can take a male avatar if I wanted to, but back then I was like, hey, why is it only like, sex? Like, why is there no women character, like no female avatars? Like, you get that after a while. Like, when I started playing Skyrim and stuff, there was a bit more customization, but it was still kind of skewed towards like the male side. So that was a bit like jarring when I started jumping to the gaming space when I was younger. Yeah. So it's nice to see customization now. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably still improve, yeah, but I think back compared to when you only had like one playable like male avatar, I think is a step forward. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we talk about representation, it's definitely gotten a lot better. I mean, obviously it can get even better than now, but like, I guess for me, and a good example was when my first time playing Harvest Moon. Back on the PlayStation 1, the OG, right? And you play as the male character and you go around romancing all the women. And I was like, the girls are cute, I don't mind them, but I kind of like, I want to romance the guys. And they made another game called like Harvest Moon, like DS Cute, for example. So you could romance, you're playing a female farmer and then you romance the guys. But then the recent one I played last year, which was like the Story of Seasons remake, it's like you can be a girl or a boy. You have like, I think 4 or 5 different skin tones. You have like 4 or 5 different outfits, and you can romance men or women. So I thought that, regardless of like the way your character presented. So it's definitely come like, a long way since, when I first picked up Harvest Moon. But definitely, customization can always be better in terms of like, hair color, eye color, skin tone, things like that. But definitely better than when we were younger, I suppose. And having to pretend we were male characters.
Yeah, that part was a bit jarring when I was younger. Or it could be like Hades, you could just go for anyone you want. I mean, if you pick. Or like Stardew Valley, you could go for anyone that you want to romance. So it's cool.
Okay, great.
Nice. I think we kind of like knocked those 2 questions off at once. And we kind of got into how things have changed between, gaming then and gaming now. But what about like in your careers, like when you started and like right now, how have things changed career-wise?
I think when I first started, it was like, I guess speaking more from my background where I was doing more like travel and food and then a little bit of gaming and things like that. It was like, Asian culture was always viewed as just something sort of very, like, still very exotic. And at least when I was in Australia, you just get like white journalists writing about it as if like, you know, the sushi master from 5,000 years ago has been, you know, like they really sort of embellish it and things like that. You didn't really get like an authentic sort of perspective based on someone from that culture. So it's more of like a cultural sort of shift. And I think that kind of comes into gaming today where, you know, obviously the industry is thriving a bit more and we get more indie games, you get more representation. So I think across the board it has become better, and it is a bit more common, I guess, to be women in gaming. Is not just like it's not so much just like a thing you hang on the door anymore. It's like it's accepted. Like no one is like sort of like questioning as much as it was before. But definitely still, you know, always got ways to go, ways to be better, I think.
I guess for myself, well, I'm invited to this kind of stuff now. I guess around in here. I guess well, for one, I'm actually a very private person, and I realize the gaming space encourages you to kind of put yourself out there, make your opinions known, connect with like-minded people, which is amazing. But in my personality, I usually scrub most of my internet presence. Like I'd prefer it to be a bit I prefer to be a bit low-key. I like just putting out my work out there so that it speaks for itself. But I guess it's made me see the importance of things like this dialogue, being an inspiration to other girls who might have their own personal stories of not being encouraged to go for careers in gaming, or not even knowing that it's possible to have a career in gaming. That our presence and our voices are very valuable. I guess a part of me is also a bit scared of like that, the kind of being public, because I'm just human. There's kind of like this pressure on girls in any industry, in any role, to be perfect, you know, like to do everything right. But of course, we're all human. We make mistakes unconsciously, without malice, but mistakes all the same. Going through it, and like Sam said, of having that community of like-minded people, we're still working through a lot of things. We acknowledge what we're great at and what we could improve. I think that's what I'm kind of facing in my personal and in my professional life. Those things I could seeing what kind of change I could affect, what kind of voices I could highlight, what I can do for the industry, but also allowing myself allow myself to realize what I need to change and what I need to work on. Yeah.
I mean, it's a process, so we are all learning. Yeah, even for our side. I guess I think the part about letting the work speak for yourself is important, because I think I'm not sure how it is for your respective media landscapes, but there is still some like discrimination against like women, not just in just the gaming space, right? Like in general, like women journalists. So I feel like there's a lot more pressure for us to do better than our male counterparts, for instance, especially when you put out opinion pieces, for instance. Opinion pieces sometimes can stir up a lot of unsavory comments, so to speak. Like I had a fellow writer who is also a woman, right? She did an opinion piece on Book of Boba Fett, and Star Wars fans can be quite not most welcoming. So yeah, she did get quite a bit of like, you know, death threats and stuff like that. The email is not pleasant. So yeah, I mean, there is really a pressure for us to write what we put out there and then to stand behind what we say. I feel like there is significantly more pressure. Yeah,
I think it's just kind of like the nature of, you know, like what both of you are saying, like we're having the community and the internet being like so open and all. That means you can meet amazing people, but it also means you can meet the most awful people out there. And then just and just being minorities in the space means we've got a target on our backs pretty often. which is really unfortunate because I guess that's another thing that has changed a lot. Growing up, gaming was a very sort of personal thing that you did on your own, and then if you met a friend who also play the same game, wow, this is so cool. And I feel now that gaming is more mainstream, it's become of like that topic that you talk about at work. The same way like in the older days, like men who talk about golf or football, like people talking about like Hades or the new upcoming like the Last of Us episode, things like that, which is very cool. But again, it's like a double-edged sword in a way as well, because you are exposed to other people, and if you're in the public eye and you get like terrible comments like that, like really, really, that's not okay at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it has been improving, which is good. But I believe I speak for everyone when I say that there's still a lot of room for improvement in general when it comes to, this kind of. But it's nice to see people who can get like on the same wavelength as you on the internet in like spaces. After all, gaming's supposed to be like a community thing, right? Like you're supposed to have a group of friends, then you game together. That's why Animal Crossing was so popular during the pandemic. Like you just interact and socialize. I think that is what the gaming spirit should be about. But I don't know, like I think over time there's also a lot of it's just too much exposure. So a lot of all these like the purpose of gaming or significance of gaming tend to get lost in the sea of everything else. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the fun question.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that was great. All right, so yeah, what are your favorite games of all time and currently? Let's talk about it. I need to go get my laptop charger, but yes, I'll be listening.
This is the part where we can't shut up, right? I'll tell. Can I go first? Can I go?
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm wearing. I'm actually wearing it. This is the Uniqlo Final Fantasy VIII. So when the Fantasy collapse, Fantasy VIII is my favorite game of all time, and I think I started playing it when I was around 8 years old. And after finishing it multiple, I can't remember which time was I finished it, but the time when I was like around 18, then when I finished that was just like it was like, starting my childhood and then finishing into my adulthood kind of thing. Like I played it so often and that meant a lot to me. And I still like think about it a lot, like basically every day, about how, it was so immersive. The storytelling was so deep. It was the first time I realized that gaming was a medium for storytelling. Before, I was playing like Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, like sure, there's sort of some kind of story about that. But like Final Fantasy VIII was like, that the story was the core of it. And I think looking back at it as well, like one of the things I loved about it was, so Rinoa is one of the main characters in the game. And they don't actually say it or anything, but she looks visibly quite Asian. And she plays a pretty big role in the game. So I think I identified a lot with her, just seeing like, another, like an Asian person, the girl in this game that I can play, and she's pretty cool. I really liked her. So I think that was my first Final Fantasy actually. And then I went on to play like all the other ones as well. So one of my favorite games. How about both of you?
I'm scared. Oh, sorry, I'm scared to never stop. Go ahead. I'm just kind of like still staffing it up. Go ahead.
Funny how you mentioned Final Fantasy 8, because I've actually never played Final Fantasy 8. My first exposure to Final Fantasy was 7, which is the one that everybody plays, right? Yeah.
It's amazing, yeah.
I like the story. I also like Sephiroth for all the trash they do, but like... Then, but I think a few of my favorite games in recent times, I used to like Bioshock Infinite quite a fair bit. Not so much the like mechanics or stuff, more of like the whole like universe hopping timeline thing. I think Ace Attorney, oh my god, I used to play Ace Attorney so much.
Oh my god, Ace Attorney is crazy. I love it so much too.
Yeah, I used to play. I wasn't like not the best student, but I used to play it during class. It's inconspicuous, like you don't have to use WN. So it's just the most
pressing.
It's like the most natural like pass-off game ever. And then I think I played Skyrim a couple of times, so I have a special attachment to it, even though I don't really like the story could do is like improvement, so to speak, but I have a special attachment. And then there's Hades. I still really love Hades. And I guess Dishonored, but I think it's kind of underrated. But yeah.
I guess for myself, I'm trying to go back. Because I wasn't really provided tools for gaming when I was a kid. So it's kind of funny because I kind of crunched so many generations of games in just a few years, or at least a bunch of years. My start was really a Flash game. Like Newgrounds and stuff like that. And I liked a lot of interactive fiction, like parser text kind of games. So stuff like Photopia, and really short stuff. So it was really like I really liked books back then, and they became like the interactive equivalent. So I guess that's what really started me into gaming and kind of warmed me up to things like visual novels. For Ace Attorney was my bridge to these different games. But in terms of favorite, I think maybe the ones I can't stop thinking about or encouraged me to go into games is A Dark Room. I think that it's free online and also an app. Slay the Spire, of course.
Ooh.
And and Knights of the Old Republic. So with RPG, yeah.
Oh, that is I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah.
Okay, play now.
Man, Ace Attorney blew my mind. Like when I was like, oh, it's a game about being a lawyer and what? And like I'm just reading and somehow I love it. Like that was I think one of my first exposures to like visual novel games as well. Another one I really love is the Danganronpa series. So
Oh my god. Oh yeah, I love the girl.
yeah, also really similar to Ace Attorney with the whole like trial and the murder mystery element of that. I really love that. But I guess like I need to shout out to this game, Genshin Impact.
Oh my god.
Sorry, I have to. Like, okay, we talked about, games, right place, right time, discovering it during the pandemic, things like that. So Genshin Impact came to me in like 2020, end of 2020, I think it came out, which is like peak pandemic, right? And you're all stuck at home. I'm here in Japan. I couldn't go back for Chinese New Year in Malaysia. And then, guess what? Like, Liyue opened up, the Genshin's version of China. And then it's like January, and then you see the lanterns. You just arrived in Liyue Harbor, and I'm just like crying, being like, oh my god, like this is like Chinese New Year. And my uncle and my cousin actually play the game as well. So I wish them like Gong Hei Fa Choi in the game before anything else. Like, see it.
And this is me and my cousin in Genshin.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I still play. I'm not as invested as I was before, but at that time I was like, this is the game. This is the game I need during COVID. That this is the game I deserve for that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really,
I get what you mean though, because it's my favorite event, like the lantern ride, because it's really reminiscent of Chinese New Year, and it really like encapsulates the spirit of it. I also wish my cousin in Australia Happy New Year.
did you?
Yeah, then he was like, thanks, but like when on Genshin, they was like, yeah. But yeah, I think Genshin was something. I actually got into Genshin by total luck. I was testing out a phone for a review, and then I got hooked. It was the worst kind of like accidentally got hooked kind. And then I just it was horrible.
No, I mean, I think Genshin surprised a lot of us, especially if you're not in the sort of the gacha game world, and you start wishing. It's like baby's first, casino. Like the first time I was like, oh, what is this? This is fun. And then suddenly I'm out of wishes. I'm like, oh, wait, let me do that again. Yeah.
I have spent money on that.
Yeah.
I am free to play, so I haven't spent, but I have instances where I
Smart.
to spend.
Well, I mean, I was free to play until Raiden Shogun came out, and it was all over from there.
It was a really mental. It was a very big moment on Twitter when they announced Raiden Shogun.
It was.
Yeah, it was great.
Wow, that's such a good moment. That's so cool. Gaming's coming. A game coming to your rescue at the time when you most needed it. That's incredible. Yeah.
I think the pandemic offered a lot of people the time in the room to catch up with a lot of games. Yeah, even though my Steam list is still kind of long, but yeah. I started on Breath of the Wild, I believe, during the pandemic. I'm still not done with that game because it's so big. But yeah, I think that period, it was a good time for people to, like when you need a mental break, that you just go and play games. And because you don't have the traveling that you normally have. Yeah, so I think a lot of people went back to gaming. That was how the Among Us phenomenon was.
Yeah, Among Us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like you mentioned before, Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone did return to gaming back then. Definitely from me as well, like picking up just older games and all. I was playing a lot of Portal 2 with one of my friends.
Oh my god.
it was so great to go back into like an older game like that, and it was just like laughing so much, like, you know, it's so ridiculous, some of these puzzles and all of that, and it felt so reminiscent of like back in high school, you know, when it's just like you and your best friend just next to each other trying to like, you know, couch co-op kind of feeling.
Yeah, water was an experience, especially the last few levels were notoriously difficult. Of course, yes.
All right, let's bring it home. You know, let's encourage other women to join the space, right? What advice do you have for someone who wants to do what you do?
All right. Quickly, I guess don't be afraid to see what's out there. There's so many opportunities I wouldn't have known about if I just didn't look for them. I didn't know that such roles, gaming journalism, was something that you could do. There's so many other roles that could be considered part of the gaming industry that many people don't know about. If you're interested in the gaming industry, I guess look at the things that you can do. Look at the things you're interested in learning, and look for those opportunities. Be proactive in it, and for sure you'll find a community like I have who will be very supportive of that dream that you have.
Yeah, I think this one could be, I mean, it's a bit challenging, especially for those who are quite introverted, which I fall into that category, but, you know, always trying to put yourself out there. Unfortunately, like, we're not as visible as other people, so we do have to be more vocal to stand out or to be heard. And I think probably like the best thing you can do is probably, you know, read up on a lot of different publications, find people who you like their writing style, maybe try and reach out to them, see if you can connect with them. Because having like someone to vouch for you internally, or having a really amazing editor who believes in what you want to cover is, I think, has been one of the most important things in my career so far. Like, I can just throw an idea in my head of being like, hey, I want to do this thing about Southeast Asian games. I think it's important because XYZ. And like, cool, I go and do it. Like, having someone who has your back like that, being really confident in your writing ability is so valuable. And yeah, I think pitching is not fun sometimes. Like,
Yep.
you know, the waiting for rejection, waiting for acceptance. Sometimes it can be days or weeks. Like, that's not great. But, you know, if you don't try, it'll always be a no, right? So as long as you keep trying, there's always that chance that it'll get accepted.
My advice is actually a mix of the two. So I think it's important to take that leap of faith. Like, a lot of the things that I think that happened in my life that turned out to be good were all very unexpected. So I think sometimes you need to be willing to step out of the comfort zone. I don't particularly... It won't be easy for sure because they're outside of your comfort zone. But I think if you dare to take that step forward, you will have a lot more opportunities to take many steps forward. And I think you have to, I think it's good to have an open mind when you're in the industry, and also because it's a creative industry, so there are times where you can experience burnout or like imposter syndrome. During these moments, I think it's important to take a break, try your best. I think trying is important. You must always try, because if you don't try, you will never know. But and don't compare yourself to others, because everybody progresses at a different speed. So always remember why you started and where you were when you started and where you are now. It may not always be inspiring, but I think it helps you get out of a rut where you need it sometimes. So yeah, it's a combination of factors. It's not an easy line. I think every job has their difficulties, but if you take that step forward, along the way, I think a lot of the details will fall in place. To me, it's a learning journey. We're all still learning, so it's just go with the flow. Try the best that we can, pitch whatever ideas you want to write. Rejection hurts, then we get hurt for a while, we accept the hurt, then we move on. Yeah. So
yeah, I think even just looking back, like, to myself at, I don't know, whenever I started playing games like 8 years old or 6 years old, it's like, if I could look at myself today, like, what, like, people are paying me to hear about my opinions about games, like, that in itself is like crazy, right? So definitely, like, advice to people who are interested in doing it, just try, put yourself out there. Rejection sucks, but just keep going. It makes you stronger, as cheesy as that sounds. Like, there's definitely space for all of us in the industry. People definitely want to hear what you have to say, even if you think like you're really small. There are people out there who are just like you, who are looking for you. And I think as long as you keep pushing for yourself to be heard, like, you're playing a bigger role than you think.
All right, thank you so much to all our special guests for this International Women's Day. Hope you guys learned something from their sharing and all the words of encouragement. It's amazing. So, catch you guys next time. Bye.